For the past year, I've been studying my first year of a history degree with the Open University. I have filmed videos previously about why I decided to study with the Open University, which is a distance learning degree, which means I don't go away to university but do it from home. And I've also made a video talking about the first half of my first year, where I go into detail about most of the modules that I have studied and the contents of those modules. And I've been studying two modules this year, two 60-credit modules, A111, Discovering the Arts and Humanities, and A113, Revolutions, which are interdisciplinary modules, which means I've studied everything from history to English literature, philosophy, religious studies, art history, anything to do with the humanities. I've probably studied it this year. It's one of the best decisions I made to start the degree. I have loved it so much, and I thought I would do my end of year university wrap up and also talk to you about my exciting second year plans today, including the Victorians. Oh, I'm so excited. If you know me, you know how much I'm excited, but more on that later. So let's first of all talk about the modules overall and what I did during the latter half of the academic year. So the big project and assignment I did at the end of the year, which finish off your first year of study. So starting off with A111, Discovering the Arts and Humanities, the final block of the module content that I mainly looked at was Crossing Boundaries, where you study lots of different interrelated things, and we tended to have longer to look at a little more content than just a week's study. So there were weeks when I studied something over 2 weeks rather than usually I'd studied it over 1 week. There were multiple chapters on different subjects that tied in together and were interdisciplinary. So the one that I looked at in most detail was looking at the Benin Bronzes, which I found fascinating to get into the argument and really think about whether the Benin Bronzes should be in European and Western museums, and looking at the history of how they were brought over here in the first place. I really enjoyed that. If enjoy is the word, I found it very interesting, although at times some of the module content was pretty harrowing, as you can probably understand if you know anything about the Benin Bronzes. So I chose to do my final essay, my final assignment on the Benin Bronzes, and I really enjoyed doing that. I didn't get my best mark for it, which was a shame, and I kind of don't really understand why, because I really did feel like I'd done a good job. But I would say that the end of year content, I found it easier just to focus on what I was studying, and I didn't really look at the other chapters so much because I had a lot of work to do for my other module. So for A111, I tended just to stick with what I was studying, what I was going to use for my last assignment of the year, which was fine, worked really well, and was just what I had to do. So then for A113, the final block of the module was our independent project, which I loved so much. We basically got to choose one of the revolutions that we had studied. For me, I chose the Russian Revolution because that's what I enjoyed the most, and we had a question that we were able to go away for weeks and weeks and plan a big essay and then write the longest essay we'd done on that question. So we had to do a lot of our own research, go away and read lots of primary sources, secondary sources, really get into the argument because they were expecting a big chunk of work from us, which I really liked because sometimes at parts of this year it's felt like we've been hand-fed stuff and we haven't really been able to get deep into something. So I found it great to be able to just do what I wanted to do within the boundaries of that work. So that was probably my favourite thing that I did altogether this year, was the independent project. It also meant that I could specialise specifically in history, which is what I've been waiting for all year. I understand why they make us study so much because it does give you a lot of background in what you're studying, and it is useful. For example, if I'm reading a text in history, it's good to have some kind of English literature knowledge, or if I'm looking at a painting that relates to something I'm doing, it's good to have art history knowledge, or if I'm studying the Reformation, it's good to know religious studies. So I understand it, but when you're doing essay questions, it's nice to be able to specialise in the discipline that you want to do. For me, that was always history. So the latter half of the year meant that I really could get deep into the subject. So in some ways, the last part of the year was less busy in terms of the content that we had to learn, but it was more busy with the actual work we had to do with the content we had already done. So the end of the year really is about proving your knowledge, proving what you've learnt through your essays, through your assignments, the work that you hand in. And it is less about learning new content. I feel like I could focus a little bit more on what I'd known, or focus on one specific area, which works for me. I really enjoyed that part of it, and I felt like I had a bit more time to spend with each subject. I feel like overall between the two modules, my favourite was Revolutions, mainly because it is a little bit more specialised, and from January onwards I was able to pretty much focus all of my attention on history, because my assignment questions were history based and I was able to choose to focus on history, so that really helped. With A111 I enjoyed some of the subjects, other stuff I wasn't too keen on, and there were some things that I just didn't have any interest in whatsoever, and some of the subjects I was very pleased to move on from. But I feel like it really does consolidate your knowledge, and by the end of the year everyone's kind of on the same level, which is what they want. They want to give you the skills and the ability in the first year. It's not so much about the content, although some of it is about the content. It's about using the content you learn to apply it to the study skills. And so for that, I think it works really well, and I do feel like I've come out of the first year with a lot more confidence. This time last year I was so nervous and I thought, oh, I don't know anything, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but through doing the assignments, through the feedback I've been given by my tutors, who were both brilliant, I feel like I'm far more confident going into the second year, and also I feel like my study skills are a lot better than they were, even though I'd studied quite recently. So it means that for some strange reason, I know, I'm really excited to get back into it in September and start writing essays. I've quite missed writing essays. I love how it tests my brain, I love how it pushes me to do better, and how I just want to improve and to get feedback that makes it easier to improve. I've just loved the actual process of learning and improvement, which has been really rewarding, and I think it's something that the Open University is particularly good at. About a month and a half ago now, I got my module results, which came through, and I was so nervous to see how I'd done. I kind of knew based on my assignments, and even though first year doesn't count, I needed a certain percentage to pass into next year, and I'd already done that, which meant that I kind of didn't put pressure on myself, but I knew that it was possible for me to get a first in both of my modules depending on my assignment grades, and so there was a certain grade I needed to get for my independent project for one of my modules to be able to get a first. So luckily not luckily, because I put the work in all year and I pushed myself and I tried really hard, and I tried different things and I really tested myself. I got a first overall in both of my modules, which I think sets me up really nicely for next year, because next year counts. Basically the way that it works is next year counts once, and then the third and final year, which I'm going to split into 2 years, counts twice. So I don't know if that makes sense, but third year or third level in Open University counts more than second level, which I think is the same for every university, but it means that next year I can start the year knowing that I've got those basic study skills in place, and I can try new things, push myself even more and find other ways to improve, but it means that I feel kind of confident that I know what I'm doing. So I'm so happy with that, and that was the grade I wanted. I would have been fine with less, because at the end of the day I'd put the work in and I'd done everything that I knew I had to do, and that was what mattered, but I was really pleased with my mark, and has made me even more eager now to begin on second year of study. So second year, I've decided to study full-time again for my second year, which means I'm doing 2 60-credit modules in history, pure history, so I'm just studying history and not any other subjects, which I'm really pleased about. And I'm doing 2 compulsory modules, so if you study history, everybody studies these. Sometimes people will split the level into 2 years. I'm doing it in 1 year, which means a lot more work for me, but it's just the way that it worked out with the time that I have this year and the way that I want to complete the degree. It made sense. So the first module I'm doing is A223 Early Modern Europe, and I have the books here. So with Open University Study, we are given these textbooks. They are included in the cost of study, and these are the study materials that you learn out of, as well as tutorials, online content like videos, readings, that kind of thing, audio recordings. They use quite a lot between the module tutors and people from the university, but mainly the week's content is in these textbooks, and they're split into 3. With A223, we study history by theme rather than chronologically. I'll talk a bit more about how it's done chronologically in a minute, but it means that we've got 3 different books with different content in it. That's the way that they've divided it. So first of all, we study Individuals' Lives and Livings, which looks at the introduction to early modern Europe. What is early modern Europe? We look at religion, which we study again later on, but we look at Christianity and faith. We look at bodies and illness, things like the humoral body, if you know what that is, beliefs in how the body worked during the early modern period. We also look at things like life living in poverty compared to life as a noble, and the early modern Europe module is mostly based in social history, so we are looking at the way that people lived, the way that they thought, the way that they were, rather than political events. Obviously there'll be some politics involved, but it really is about social history, which is my favourite, so I'm really happy with that. Then the other book we have is Communities, Activities and Places, and just flicking through, we have chapters on urban communities, we have chapters on the Reformation, about print and literacy rates, we have another chapter on disease, which will be a fun one, studying it in a pandemic. Not gonna lie, I'm not quite looking forward to that, or maybe it'll be relatable. Looking at ritual, protest and riot, which is interesting. And then the final book, which we'll study towards the end of the year, is States, Commerce and Ideas. So we're looking at consumerism, the beginnings of consumerism. We look at religious conflict and emigration. We look at government and early forms of government, so that will be a little bit more political, but on the whole, looking through these books, there are so many interesting subjects, and I was a little bit nervous because early modern Europe isn't something that I am particularly versed in already. It's not something I know bits and pieces, studied the Tudors many times at school, but I think this will really challenge me and test me, and I'll learn new things, which is the best thing about doing the degree. And then the other module I'm doing this year is A225, which is called The British Isles and the Modern World, 1789 to 1914. So we study the long 19th century, beginning with the French Revolution, all the way to the outbreak of the First World War. As you can probably imagine if you've watched my videos before, I am so excited to study the Victorians. And when I was researching the course before I signed up, this was the one module I was so excited about. There is so much content in there that I cannot wait to study, and I think and very, very much hope that I'm going to love pretty much every minute of it. At the time of filming this, I haven't had my module books through yet. I think they're due to arrive tomorrow, which is kind of annoying, so I will read to you instead the content of the module and what the books are called. So this is done chronologically, so we're not looking by theme, although some of it I think will be themed within. We are looking at different blocks of time. So the first one we start with is called Ambition and Anxiety 1789 to 1840, which looks at the social and economic relations which had been stable, but obviously with the outbreak of the French Revolution things turn quite volatile. So we look at the Industrial Revolution, the rise of cities and the working class, which is something I'm very interested in. I'm particularly interested, which I hope we'll cover, at different revolts and protests at this time. It's something that I find super interesting. So I'm hoping we'll look at things like the Peterloo Massacre, which falls within that time, and I suppose we'll also look at the Napoleonic Wars and things like that. The second block is called Confidence and Crisis 1840 to 1880. We look at this period of stability and optimism about the future, the rise of the middle class, the impact of sanitary reform on cities, and the decline of radicalism. But we also look at the Irish famine, the new poor laws, and the campaign for political rights for working men, which I assume is Chartism. Again, something I'm very interested in. And also I'm really interested in this time because it's a time when the Brontes were writing. And because of my research about the Brontes and the time in which they were living, I do really love this period in time, the 1840s, the 1850s. There is so much going on and so much that I love. I just love it all. I'm so excited. And then the final block is called Decline and Renewal 1880 to 1914. And I think this will be interesting because there really was fear at this time, particularly during the 1890s, that the empire was going to end. That's all the Victorians cared about. We're losing our place in the world, everything is going to end, and people were really quite anxious about this. So that will, again, it's all so interesting. I just want to get started immediately. I'm so looking forward to the books arriving and being able to see the content. I hope it won't be disappointing. I hope I won't be eating my words, but so much of the content is what I love most and I'm so passionate about. And I've mentioned before, I would like to eventually specialise after my degree in Victorian and Edwardian studies, whether that's literature based or history based. So it's just everything that I need to know, everything I want to know. I just want to absorb all the information. So both of these modules have assignments, or TMAs, tutor marked assignments as the Open University call them, and then an exam at the end of the year. So I'll have an A223 and an A225 exam, which I'm hoping won't overlap in time, although I have been told the week that they are going to be in, and I don't know how it's going to work exactly this year because of the pandemic, but we have been told that we'll be doing that exam from home, so it's really nice to know that, and it does lessen some of my anxiety about doing an exam because exams are not my favourite. So I'm really hoping, fingers crossed if I feel like it, that I will document much of the year this year, talking about how I study, what I'm studying. I didn't last year because I was really getting into it, but this year I'd really like to do that and share a lot of my study with you, because I'm so excited about it, and I think there's lots that you'll be excited about too. So hopefully some study vlogs, definitely some updates throughout the year of how the degree is going. Let me know if you are doing the Open University degree, because it's been great in my previous videos to hear from lots of you and to hear how your own study is going. And good luck to all of you for the next academic year, whether you're studying with the Open University or not. So thank you so much for watching this video, and happy studying!